Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heirs apparent, and people who already have allocated land that is not theirs. Welcome to Katiba na Chai. My name is Ngachira, and today we're talking about a will that looked perfect. It was typed, it was witnessed, it was stamped, very confident, Then the High Court put in the signature and said, no. Not loudly, not emotionally, just kwa maono yangu, no. This is a succession case from Eldoret. The one forged signature caused an entire will to collapse, an executor to lose authority, and an estate to be treated as if no will had ever existed. There was no arrest in this one, there was no shouting, just legal erasure. And if you've ever assumed that inheritance disputes are about who shouts the loudest, this case is for you. Stay with me. Because in this case, the loudest thing in the court was the paper. Here are the facts, exactly as they appear in the judgment. The deceased passed away in 2014. After his death, a written will dated 2014 was presented to court. The will distributed land, livestock, vehicles, machinery, the usual catalogue of a Kenyan life well lived, One of the children, a daughter, petitioned the High Court for probate of that will and was appointed the executor. And immediately tutagawa hiki as per the will. On paper, everything was clean. So clean that if documents had self-esteem, this would have been very confident. The miguna of documents. But not everyone agreed. Other children of the deceased, including the sons, filed some objections. They were not complaining about the emotions. They were not complaining about fairness. They were not complaining about family politics. Apana ningepewa, ningefanywa. No. They said something far more serious. They said that will was not genuine. And once you say forgery in court, the case stops being about a family story, becomes a handwriting problem. Now, to be fair, let's look at both sides. Yeah, I'm a fair guy. So the petitioner, the daughter that is, told the court that the will was made by the deceased and that he was of sound mind when he did, that he gave instructions, that advocates were involved. In fact, there were witnesses present, and that everything was done properly. So, she go happy, it was calm, orderly, confident. The kind of case that says we followed procedure. What more do you want? Now, the objectors did not argue procedure. They argued authenticity. They said, your signature on the will was not their dad's. It did not match how he signed the other documents. The will may look official, but it's lying. And that's a dangerous allegation because once authenticity is challenged, the court stops listening to explanation and starts looking at evidence. Now, Justice R. Nyakundi did not resolve this dispute with emotion or family testimony. He did something very boring, but very deadly. He sent the will for forensic examination. And this is the moment every confident storyteller fears, because once science enters the room heavy, memory becomes irrelevant. The document examiner compared known genuine signatures of the deceased with a signature on the will. He examined stroke formation, pen pressure, consistency, execution style, and the conclusion was simple. The signatures were not authored by the same hand. There was different movement, there was different rhythm, there was different pressure. CSI Eldoret. This was not one tired man signing on a bad day. This was a completely different signing behavior. The judge went even further and said that even without the extent, that expert report, the inconsistencies were visible to the naked eye. And that science matters, because that's judicial language for atam kujaribu. Like, guys, see, give me a kazi. Once the court found the signature was forged, everything else stopped mattering. Oh, there were witnesses. Oh, there were advocates. Oh, long explanations. Unajua hiyo siku walikuwa wamekuja. The court declared the will invalid. As a result, that grant she was seeking was revoked and the executor lost authority. And the estate was administered as if the deceased died intestate. That is without a will. That's legal language for pretend this document never existed. Hakuna but apa ilikuwa serious. Apa signature, no partial validity, no saving clauses, no, but surely it must have intended, no. The law does not guess, the law verifies. Now here's this question everyone asked. If the court found forgery, who was arrested? No one. And that's not a mistake. This was a succession matter. a civil case. The court's job was to determine whether the will was valid. Criminal prosecution requires a separate investigation, separate charges, and a higher standard of proof. The court did not order arrests. It did not recommend prosecution. It simply refused to recognize the document. And that distinction is important because in civil law, fraud is often punished, not with prison, but with the denial of the benefit that you are seeking through that fraud. You don't go to jail, you just don't get what you are trying to get. An inheritance dispute, that can be far more painful. So this case teaches several hard lessons. 1, a will stands or falls as a whole. You can't keep the good parts and throw away the illegal ones. Forgery contaminates everything. 2, attestation does not cure fraud. Just because an advocate has stamped it, that's not a magic spell. Witnesses do not override handwriting science. Okay. 3, confidence is not evidence. Saying we were all there does not beat ink pressure and muscle memory. 4, fraud resets the board. No will, no executor, no shortcuts, just statutory distribution and court supervision. People think inheritance fights are about greed. Sometimes they are, but in this case, it reminds us of something colder. Paper remembers, hands reveal. And courts don't reward creativity. It's not compositions, okay? The court did not jail anyone, but did something quiet. It just said the whole document is completely erased. And in succession law, being forgotten is the harshest crime. Outcome. That's why on Katiba na Chai, we just don't tell you what the court decided. No. We show you how the court thinks. My name is Ngachira, and if this episode helped you understand the law or scared you just enough to do things properly, you already know what to do. Subscribe and share it with someone who has a plan. And I'll see you on the next cup of Katiba na Chai.